So I've had this catch can for quite some time, and if we look past my laziness, it only took me about a year and a half to reach out to Radium, because they actually sent me the wrong bracket for this catch can when I received it. It was like a double donger, and it absolutely did not fit this catch can. So once I reached out to them, they rectified the problem pretty easy. So that was nice on their part. I went on Amazon and found these 3/8 fittings, these quick connects, and that's what I'm going to be using to tie this catch can into the system. I'm going to basically be using the same nylon lines that I used for the fuel system. They're not going to collapse. They're very durable, very strong, and just perfect for this application. Anyways, here was that brand new, fresh off the grill bracket that Radium just sent me, and as you can see, it actually fits this time. So this is the original kit that I bought off of, you know, insert random name here, eBay, Amazon, just like no name cheap Chinesium stuff. Anyway, we all know these type of things, right? You've seen it 1,000 times, and it comes with all these fittings. And guys, I'm not buying top of the line stuff, okay? This is like the most affordable option, and it still gets very expensive when you're having to source out all of these type of fittings. You know, it's not like I'm going to Vibrant or anything like that. On this aftermarket valve cover, you can see there's 2 ports on the back, 2 ports on the front, and that was my initial plan, to tap into this. But I've never really liked that because I don't understand how that system would work. Anyway, this was my original plan, to put the catch can right here, but as you can see, it's not going to clear the hood. I wouldn't be able to close the hood, and that's not good. So I thought maybe behind the engine, but because of the headers, all the heat, that's not good for the nylon lines. It would probably just melt the lines. And you're probably thinking, what do you mean clear the hood? The engine doesn't even clear the hood. Well, if I had to, I would cut a hole in the hood for the engine, but I'm not going to cut a hole in the hood for a stupid catch can, if that makes sense. So after looking at the engine bay for about 40 minutes, I came to the conclusion that the only place this catch can is going to fit comfortably is down here on the frame next to the transmission. And you can see we have relative open space, and it would make running the lines to the catch can super easy, barely an inconvenience. So I think that's what I'm going to go with. So let's go ahead and do a quick mock-up just so you can get the idea. And all of this looks great, so let's make it happen. This is the part where I have to make a bracket for a bracket. As you can see, I have this steel plate here that I bought for a different project, but I never really ended up using it, so let's use it for this project. If we set the bracket for the catch can on top of the steel plate, and we use this brand new hardware that I just bought, they're 10mm bolts, but they're really stubby. You can see with a mock-up here, they're going to be able to thread into the steel plate and just like clear perfectly. They're gonna fit real nice. So basically the bracket could be bolted on to the steel plate, and that's how I would remove the catch can whenever I wanted to. But the piece that's gonna get threaded is gonna be panel bonded, aka glued to the frame of the car, so it's gonna be permanent. So basically this is a way for me to have a nice, really rigid and strong base to mount the catch can on, and I'm gonna have no fears of like putting rib nuts or welding onto real thin sheet metal. You get what I'm saying? So I got some punches here that are gonna help us center the hose, and it just ensures that I drill all of the holes in the correct spot. If anyone has been wondering why it's been taking me so long to get out CRX videos, well, it's because I have actual work to do. The CRX is just a side project. Plus, Expedition 33 just came out, and I have a ton of hours into that video game. So the mounting plate turned out really nice, just as I expected. As you can see, the bolts just sit a little bit shy of coming past the plate, which is exactly what I wanted. And honestly guys, it's turning out better than I expected. But let's go ahead and mock it up on a car and make sure we're happy with how it's going to look and how it's going to fit. So I put the bracket back on the catch can just for now, and as you can see with all the new hardware, it's looking pretty good. What I'm going to use in the meantime is these low profile magnets. They're very strong, so it'll be a perfect substitute, so we could go ahead and mount this thing on the car and just make sure it's going to work out. Before we install the catch can, let's go ahead and blow off the engine real fast. All the dust that's sitting on top of it has really been bothering me. We're not going to give it a major cleaning, of course. I'm too lazy for that. But just a quick dust off would do, and it'd just make me feel a little bit better. And there we go. That looks about 4% better. I'm happy with it. And now we could get back to the catch can. So it still has the magnets on it, and I'm just lowering it into its place and just kind of eyeballing where it's going to sit. Now that the catch can is in its place and everything's looking pretty good, but I went ahead and lowered the catch can as much as I possibly could for the sake of clearance. And if we look from the bottom of the card, you can see we have about maybe 2 inches of clearance between what I'm calling the subframe and the drain bolt on the catch can. Now I know some of you are saying, well, that's not a lot of clearance to drain out the catch can, but I have other ways of getting the oil out of it, and I'll show you that later on in the video. For now, I want to go ahead and get the digital level and make sure that the mounting plate is going to be 100% level with the car, because if this thing sits even slightly crooked, it's going to bother me forever. And the fact that this plate is getting panel bonded to the car, like wherever it sits, it's permanent. It is not moving at all. You get what I'm saying? So it has to be perfect the first time. That took a while to get that thing level, but it's going to pay off in the long run. Now we could go ahead and get the digital level out of here, and I'm just going to use a Sharpie marker to mark where the plate is supposed to go, because obviously I can't have the level on it when I'm trying to panel bond it in place. All I could do is go off of the reference of the Sharpie marks that I made. It's the best I got. We'll go ahead and pull this off of here and get the plate off of the catch can. The first thing I did was take off the scale off of the steel plate with my die grinder, and then I really wanted to scuff up or gouge the surface because it gives the two-part epoxy really something to bite into and hold on to. It's kind of like if you're trying to bond a piece of glass, it's not going to stick as well because the glass is nice and smooth, so you really want that rough texture. So I went ahead and replicated the same exact thing on the car. First of all, I had to remove the paint because the panel bonding adhesive has to go metal to metal, and then I use my grinder to gouge up the surface just as well. So speaking of the two-part epoxy really biting and holding on to something, some people may have noticed that I drilled 2 holes in the center of my plate that I just made, and that's just so that the two-part epoxy can squeeze through those things and kind of work as dowels, almost like really locking that thing in place. Just I know it's not going to fall off, but it's just a little bit of extra security, making those dowels out of two-part epoxy, if you will. So this is like a mixing tube that's supposed to go on this thing, and as you squeeze it through, it's supposed to mix the two-part epoxy and comes out mixed already, you know, once you got the proper attachment. But I lost a locking ring that goes on there, so I couldn't use it. So the next best alternative is just to use the bent valve that I bent on the K series when I was trying to remove the valve the last time. If you know, you watched that video, I'll put a link in the top right hand corner how I ended up bending the valve. After mixing the epoxy for a good amount of time, you want to make sure this thing is properly mixed. I'm just using the acid brush to go ahead and apply it, and once you put a coat right here, also go ahead and put a coat on the side of the car, and you can see the epoxy coming through those 2 holes that I drilled, and that's exactly the purpose of those holes, is so that the epoxy can come through it and act as a dowel, and just to really make sure. that this plate isn't going to move. I'm using the magnets here to hold the plate in place while the epoxy cures, and I just use some standard like earplugs to put in the threaded hose because I don't want that epoxy to get on the threads, and that would be a real nightmare to try to get that out of there. It's been over 24 hours and the adhesive has fully cured. That thing isn't going anywhere, guys, trust me. So at this point, the steel plate is just bare. There's no paint on it. I do plan on painting it in the future, but for the time being, I'm just going to go ahead and spray with some CRC to protect it from rusting. And once we do that, we could go ahead and start to assemble the catch can. Now these are like -10 ORB, so they have the O-rings to seal. And I really want to make sure these things don't tear, so I'm just putting a little bit of Sil Glide on the O-rings as I tighten them down. Looking at the dust imprint of these wrenches tells you how often I use them. I've had them for years and I think this is the second time I've actually been able to use them. It is what it is, but it's nice whenever you do get to use them. Makes you feel fancy, like you should have like a monocle or something. Anyway, now we could go ahead and bolt on the bracket. It's a little tricky trying to get the 4 bolts inside of here, but it's definitely doable. Not the worst thing I've ever done. So now I need to feed the catch can with a vacuum source. So here I am coming to the intake manifold and pulling off this plug right here that previously was doing nothing. You can see we're going to put another 3/8 quick connect fitting on it, just like the one off to the left side. The one on the left is actually going to the brake booster, and that's what's applying vacuum to our brake booster. So this one that I'm just installing is obviously going to be pulling a vacuum on our catch can. And this is the nylon line that I'm going to be using for this. I have a special tool right here that's made for cutting tubes and hoses like this. It does a really clean job. Anyway, this is the same type of nylon line that I use to go to the brake booster as well as my fuel line. It's very durable, very heavy duty, and it could withstand the pressures of vacuum like here for the catch can, as well as pressures like fuel pressure. And I found it to just be very reliable. And this tool that I'm using right here has one job. It's to press on the fittings onto a nylon line. Now when you press on these nylon lines onto the fittings, they're usually pretty solid, but I like to go the extra mile and just put a clamp on each connection, just a little bit of extra security. And you can see I'm sliding over that clamp right now. You got to make sure you put your clamps on before you put on your last fitting, of course, because then you're not going to be able to slide it on. And this is again a specialty tool for tightening down these clamps. Now you don't need this special tool. I found you could just use something that pinches in it to get the job done, but it's nice to have the proper tool. So now that this first line is made up, we only have to make 2 of them. That's a nice thing. But now that the first line is made up, we could go ahead and test fit it. We're going to go ahead and put our locking tab onto the fitting, and then we can slide our line over. And once you get that nice satisfying click, you know you've taken it all the way home. Alright, and we're moving along here pretty quickly. Everything looks really nice, and I even used 2 zip ties as a makeshift line holder. It's temporary. Who am I kidding? It's probably going to be permanent. It looks good and it functions, you know, so why not? So the important thing here is that the line goes from the intake manifold down to the catch can without any obstructions. It's not touching anything or rubbing, because that could lead to a big problem in the future. So when you're making these lines, always keep that in mind, that you don't want the lines touching anything on their path. And this is the second line. I made it off camera. You can see it has a retainer clip in the center, and I'll show you that in a second. The only difference on this line is this end does not have a 3/8 quick connect, because obviously it needs to go to the PCV, which just takes like a regular hose and clamp. So I'm not happy about it, but it's just the way it is. Maybe I could figure out something else in the future, but for now it's going to do. On the catch can side, we'll go ahead and install this line, and once again we'll get that satisfying click. And here's that retainer clip I was showing you guys earlier. It just goes into a threaded hole right here on the engine, and it's just another mounting point to stop the hose from bouncing around. I think it also looks pretty clean. So this end obviously is going to go directly onto the PCV. It doesn't need a clamp, because this hose honestly is a little bit undersized, so I kind of forced it on there, and it's on there like super tight. It doesn't require a clamp. And now that it's fully installed, we could get a quick overview. Guys, look how clean all of this looks. Oh, and these two little like nipples in the middle that I had these big plugs on them, I got rid of them because they looked ugly, and I put little nipples on. So we all love little nipples. Anyway, look how clean this looks, guys. I'm like so happy with how this turned out, and I'm 100% satisfied. 10 out of 10 would recommend. So that kit that I showed you guys at the beginning of the video, you know, the one everyone uses off of like Amazon, tell me this doesn't look cleaner than using one of those generic kits. You get what I'm saying? And again, none of the lines touch anything on their path. Really happy with how this turned out. Oh, and how I was talking about you know, draining the catch can without having great access to the drain bolts. This is what I would do. I have a vacuum pump with a very thin tube on it. All I would do is get my vacuum pump, pull out the dipstick for the catch can, and I would put the hose for my vacuum pump right at the bottom of the catch can, push it all the way in, and simply just start pumping, and that's gonna suck out the oil. You see why it wasn't that important that I kind of don't have great access to the drain plug on the bottom? Because it's not that big of a deal. I'd rather just suck the oil out with my vacuum pump, because it's way easier anyway. Alright, I'm not gonna leave you guys hanging. Let's go ahead, start her up, make sure everything's good with the new catch can. And just so you guys know, the oil that was in there last year, you know, while it sat through winter, that oil has been drained out. So it's got a fresh oil, new filter on it, and it's pretty much good to go. Of course, the oil I drained out of it looked brand spanking new, but it is what it is. You know, if oil's been sitting in the car for a while, it's just a good idea to get rid of it. So let's go ahead. Let me get through this mess. I got to step through all of this. We'll start her up. Fuel prime up. It would help if I connected the battery. Alright guys, let's see how she starts up after hibernating the entire winter. So it's going to be a first start up after a long time. I could hear the fuel pump doing its thing. I'm going to give it one more prime. We're in neutral. Let's see what happens. I must not be making a good connection on the battery. Alright, let's try it again. Okay, what is going on here? That sounds like the starter. Are you kidding me? It's a brand new starter. I checked the grounds. I did remove one of the grounds when I was doing the catch can, but that ground has been reattached. Let me try tightening up the battery post, make sure it's not that. And I found a problem. So I got my multimeter out here. That's how it's connected to the positive, and this goes to negative. We have 11.1 volts. Yeah, that's not good. So this is a brand new battery. I bought it last year. But throughout the winter, I did keep it on a trickle charger, so it's not like it just sat here not being maintained. I was having it on a trickle charger the entire winter, but to be honest, we're well past winter, and it's probably been a month or a month and a half since I put my trickle charger on this thing. So I'm gonna go ahead and set that up right now, and let's just give it a full 24 hours to charge. And that's the reason why the car isn't starting. 11 volts is not enough to start a car. So it'll be 24 hours for me, but it'll just be a second for you guys. Alright, so it's been over 24 hours. Battery terminal is reconnected. Let's go ahead and test the voltage. 12.5 volts. Seems pretty good. Let's go ahead and attempt to start her up. Alright, once again, we'll let the fuel pump prime. One more time. Alright, let's see what happens. Oh boy, even after sitting for months, he started up like that, instantly. Oh yeah. I still gotta get all that calibrated and working. Sounds good. I'm just gonna let it run for a few minutes, get all the oil and the fluid circulating. Just happy to see it running again.